When I backpacked through Thailand, I really struggled to connect with a lot of the locals because I couldn't speak the language.
Nice.
You my friend. You my friend.
We still had a lot of fun though.
Welcome to Thailand. Welcome to Thailand.
My dream is to travel the world, and right now I'm focused on Latin America. I even have this map printed out and I'm like constantly dreaming about all the different places I want to see. But I need to learn Spanish in order to do that because I want to get the most of the experience from traveling. That's it, I've completed the first step. I got a goatee. I don't know if that's going to help with learning Spanish, but we'll see. It's impossible to learn all of Spanish in 45 days, but you can accomplish a lot in those 45 days as shown by other videos. Of course, what I mean here is reaching conversational fluency, and that's different. When you look at the DELE framework, the aim here is to essentially speed run to B1. It's enough to get by in a conversation and communicate what you're thinking. The biggest obstacle with learning like this, I think, is clarity, not knowing what to study in each day. So I've broken it down into a daily 4-step plan for how to learn Spanish to conversational fluency in 45 days. Step 1, raw dog the concepts. This entails studying around 40 or so concepts that I've identified as essential to becoming conversationally fluent. So I've got a list here that I'll be running through. Step 2, speed running vocabulary. Essentially, this is just memorizing through flashcards the 1,000 most common words in Spanish, but then also my personal most common words. Step 3, eat Spanish. Eating Spanish basically means consuming Spanish media with something I call proactive immersion. Step 4, build relationships. Conversations with real Spanish people is the key here, through text or video calls. So I put this together by perusing a couple of the textbooks that I have, going through a bunch of YouTube videos, and also the r/Spanish subreddit too. Alright, step 1, raw dogging the concept. So as mentioned, I have about 40 or so concepts that I'm gonna run through. If I put in the work to understand each and every one of these concepts, then I'm sure there's no way I won't be conversationally fluent by the end of these 45 days. So that YouTuber Language Lord had a really cool method for learning in 45 days.
Learning the basics for me included mastering just 2 things: vocabulary and verb conjugation.
Pensaste.
This is difficult but absolutely essential concepts like direct object pronouns and reflexive verbs. So for instance, if you had phrases like me duele la espalda, you'd really struggle to understand what it means. This follows 2 different concepts, reflexive verbs and direct object pronouns. You can't be conversationally fluent without knowing these core concepts. If you don't come across these and you only focus on verbs and conjugation, you're not going to know what to do or how to interpret this sentence. With that being said, I really believe that it takes you pretty much putting in the hard work of learning and understanding these concepts. Or in other words, you just raw dog the concepts. Step 2, speed run vocabulary. So we're going to start with the 1,000 most common words in Spanish. I'm going to use a tool called Anki, which is favored by popular YouTubers like Xiaoma.
After each speaking session, I collect and record key words, phrases, or sentences from the session into Anki, a free flashcard program.
I think the 1,000 most common words is a good strategy. A step in a smarter direction would be figuring out what are the 1,000 most common words that are personal to you. What I mean by this is that everyone uses different words in their daily lives more frequently than others. Someone who works professionally as a scientist is going to use scientific terms more often than others. Someone who is really into fitness are going to use exercising terms a lot. In my case, for instance, I would love to talk about traveling, startups, fitness as well. So it only makes sense that I prioritize these kinds of vocabulary so that I quicker reach a point where I'm able to capably express myself on the topics that I speak about most. So how will you identify these personal vocabulary? You just write out paragraphs in English about general topics that you'd want to chat about, and you translate it, and then you see the words that come up most frequently, and then you commit those words to memory, and that becomes part of your most common Spanish words. If I do this for 45 days consistently, I should have a solid base of vocabulary around topics that I want to chat about frequently. Step 3, eat Spanish. So when I say eat Spanish, I mean consume Spanish media, of course. And I mentioned something earlier about proactive immersion. So what I mean by proactive immersion is kind of riffing off the idea that there's 6 types of learning. So some people say, I'm more of a visual learner, or I'm more of an auditory learner. I think the best way to go about it is to combine as many of them as frequently as possible to get the most out of consuming the information. So when I say proactive immersion, what I mean here is just combining 2 of those types of learning together. If I'm reading a book, what I like to do is to actually visually read the book, but then also have an audible tape playing in the background as well. That way, I'm learning both visually through seeing the text, but then also auditorily. Just got this book from the YouTuber Ollie Richards, which is short stories in Spanish, which I'll be using as well. Then moving on to YouTube videos with eating Spanish. I think this is an important way for me to eat Spanish because I consume so much YouTube anyways. I think there's a criteria that I figured out that we'd have to go through. So I need to find YouTube videos that are short in length, otherwise they can be too overwhelming to keep my attention. Clear to follow in speech, because casual conversation can be really hard to follow. You don't want to have too many people talking at once or too casual of a YouTube video, because when people people naturally talk, it can be really hard to follow, especially as a beginner. You want it to be not on too niche of a subject, and if you have too much jargon, that's going to confuse you. Also on like a really specialized topic, again, if it's a video on like the 2008 financial recession, you're going to have so many words that come up there that you're probably not going to really use that frequently. So it's going to be a waste of your energy and time to try and focus on these words. And finally, having accurate transcripts available so that you can follow through word for word. Listening to music will be massively helpful. But when I listen to music, I want to study the lyrics as well. So proactive immersion with music, I think, would be listening to the music, but also printing out the lyrics and studying the lyrics as you go as well. If I eat Spanish daily by consuming Spanish media daily, I'll bring the language to life by giving context to all this theory that I'm learning. Because when you study it in a vacuum on its own, I don't think you'll really be able to naturally speak to people. I also learned plenty of colloquial words and phrases as well that you otherwise won't get from the theory. After all, Latin America is such a diverse place with so many countries. It's bound to have so many different slangs and pronunciations. Step 4, build relationships. So of course here you want to converse with real Spanish people. I do have a few Spanish people that I'm going to reach out to, but I don't know if I have enough that I can kind of have these beginner conversations where I'm fumbling through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through italki, probably even on Instagram you can find people. I want to try this out, but maybe DMing people under like popular Spanish Instagram accounts, the meme pages and the news pages that a lot of the Spanish people follow. You could actually go in there, maybe just DM one of the random Spanish people and just say, hey, I'm trying to learn Spanish, could you help? It's free that way, so if you can't afford italki, like maybe I might not be able to, then that could be a good way to go about doing it as well. So I'm not sure when the right time to begin conversational practice would be, but I think it should be ASAP. Studying without speaking is like learning to fight by just hitting a heavy bag. I'll end up just deluding myself into thinking I'm prepared for a real fight when at the end of the day I've just been hitting a bag that doesn't hit back. Same way, when you're speaking and you're not really speaking to a person that's gonna speak back to you, you're not really gonna be prepared for real conversation, and so you're not gonna be conversationally fluent. So I think again, after I fully raw dog all the concepts or get to a certain point where I feel like this is enough to go ahead and speak about certain topics, I want to go straight into having those conversations with real people. If I've had several conversations where I've been able to express myself to people within these next 45 days, then I'll be more prepared for when I'm actually in Latin America to have these kind of conversations happen naturally. So yeah, that's about it. I'll be posting new videos on my progress every Sunday. I'm really keen to build a community around this as well. So if you want to be a part of that community, DM me on Instagram at iman.mia, and you can DM me any questions, or if you want to learn together as well. Make sure to also subscribe, like and comment as well so I can keep doing these YouTube videos. This is my first and I really want to keep going with this and see where it goes. I'll see you in the next video.